Hello, and welcome to a new series by me, Matt NF. This is a series I'm calling Level Design Analysis. And in these videos, I'm going to be going through all the maps in L4D 2 and talking about how the levels are built from a design perspective and what the designer might have been thinking when he was making these levels and little subtle tricks that are used as designers to achieve different design goals. So a little bit about me. I've been working in the Left 4 Dead mod community since 2009 when the game came out. Worked on things like Pro Mod, Zone Mod, Dark Carnival Remix, Hard Rain Downpour. Worked a little bit on The Last Stand as well, and now I work in the industry as a level designer at Turtle Rock Studios. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. And if you have any feedback, if you could leave a comment down below, if anything I might have missed or something you wanted me to talk about. And I can always go over it again in the future video, maybe like a recap of Dark Carnival things I missed and stuff like that. But yeah, let's just start here. So we have our establishing shot here where we first see the billboard for Whispering Oaks Amusement Park. And I think it's really cool what they did here, where you see the amusement park, but you don't actually get there like right away. Like you start pretty far away, and they could have very easily have put this car, like there's a road in front of the actual Whispering Oaks amusement park, and they could have very easily have put the car right there and you just start right at the amusement park. But they didn't do that, and they have you start far away and you have to like get to there and go through a huge journey to get there. And that's always really cool to do from a design point of view because you build this anticipation and this intrigue, and this feeling of like there's something really cool up ahead, but to get there I have to go through all this shit, and it's like it's just this cool anticipation feeling. So kudos to the level designers for not starting us at the carnival itself, which is pretty cool. So yeah, here we have the Jimmy Gibbs car. So in level design or in art, we often call these kind of objects that are very highly detailed, look way better than everything else. We call them hero props. I've also heard them called weenies before. And these are props that are, they have a lot of, it's going to be something that players are looking at a lot. It's going to have a lot of attention. It's in dead center. This was your main thing that you had to do to complete the campaign. Like your main objective was filling up the car. So, obviously that's going to be a huge center of attention. You put a lot of detail into it. But from an art perspective, you don't want to do that with every single object in the game because that would get very expensive very quickly and, take a lot of time to do all that. Like, if you look at this taxi here and then compare it to the Jimmy Gibbs car, like it's a huge difference in detail. And for very good reason. This taxi is not going to be something you're looking at very often. You're going to be like glancing by it at most and not really giving it too much attention. So as an artist, you don't want to waste too much time on something that players are not going to be looking at too much. Just kind of get like, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but just like sufficient amount that would make sense for the amount of time you have to put into it. Because, games have deadlines and you got to get stuff done on time, and, you got to make decisions on what you want to put your effort into. So like this car, you want to put a lot of effort into that because it's a big set piece thing, but not so much the taxi. But yeah, so I noticed here at the beginning, you start off and there's a fence here, which doesn't make any sense at all. But if you think too hard about Left 4 Dead levels, they tend not to make sense. But I wish that the level designers did something here where like there was a ramp maybe that the Jimmy Gibbs car like went over, which it would explain how it got here, but also why you can't go back this way. Unless the survivors like erected this fence, but that also be kind of strange. Like, why is there a fence just randomly here that they set up? I don't know. But yeah, this is not like a huge deal because players are very likely not going to look back. You're going to run straight ahead. But yeah, that always bugged me a little bit. And then you can see they put the semi truck here to sort of block the edge of the map, just so you don't see it as much, to obscure it a little bit. I wish they had put maybe like some bushes right there to hide the rest of it, but not a huge deal at the end of the day. Let's see here. So speaking of, we talked about how the car has a lot of effort put into it, and then you have this bus here, and you actually see this bus quite often through this area. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them, and when you're trying to art something out and make it look real nice, you want to try and get reuse as much as possible. Like if they were building out this highway and they made every single car be brand new and unique and only using that one spot, This would take a fuck ton of time to make and a lot of effort. And and with Left 4 Dead's 1 year deadline, they would not have finished the game on time if they had done that. So you have to reuse stuff a lot. And you see that in here. You see the same cars kind of copy pasted a little bit throughout this area. And the same thing with the buses. They have a bunch of these, but it kind of works for the setting. Like, you don't really think too much about it when you're playing. You're just like running around shooting zombies because your focus is on the zombies and not the buses. So it's kind of like background thing to you in a way. You might notice it, but you probably just don't care. Like, it's not a huge deal. So it's very smart from the artist to do stuff like that. There's little shortcuts you can do in this area. Like, you can jump over this. I don't know if that's intended by the developers, but it's cool that it's here. Kind of like that freedom that it gives you to take multiple paths. So something very subtle going on here with this whole highway section. It's kind of hard to tell. Maybe we can look at the side of it. Let me see. Okay, you can kind of see it a little bit more here. So if you notice, the whole thing is going downhill, with the uphill part being at the very beginning. So it's going down the entire time. And it's very, very, very subtle. Now, what was the point of doing that? Why would they do that? So if you think about a slope, and you're on the top of the slope, the very highest point, and you're looking down, you can see more in front of you than if you were turning around and looking back. You know what I mean? Like, if you're in the middle of like a slope and you look back and you're looking uphill, you see less than if you're looking downhill. So I imagine to help players orient themselves in all these cars, because you might be like fighting zombies, you might get turned around, and if you're playing this for the first time, you might not know which way is forward. So there's a few things going on here to kind of guide you forward, one of which is the downhill slope. Another of which is all the cars are facing that direction, so you kind of follow the cars in a way too. So you're going forward, and I don't think there's any cars actually facing the opposite direction. So it's just two subtle tricks going on here in the highway section to keep you oriented and going forward and not getting lost in this maze of cars. So it's a very cool trick from the designers here. And then when you finally get to this area, you have more things kind of guiding you forward. You have this arrow here, yellow sign. There's always the yellow paint discourse we've seen a lot these days on Twitter. You see these yellow, I forgot what these are called, but you see these things here. You have the pole up there. And then, of course, this whole area is kind of open a little bit, drawing you towards that. And then you even have this semi-truck pointing towards the right. And the way people move through games, and in real life too, is you're almost like a river, and you're like flowing through a space, through the paths of least resistance. So you see this area, and you'll tend to flow here. You see this thing, and it'll push you to the right very subtly. So there's all these little tricks that designers can use to try and orient you the right way. Even these lights pointing over to this direction here. So it's just a bunch of little things, but they all kind of add up. And then eventually you get down here, you see more lights down there, and it just kind of pulls you forward like a moth to a flame. But they did put other things over here, so if you do decide to leave the beaten path a little bit, you can get rewarded with new items and adrenaline shots, explosive ammo, that kind of thing. So it does encourage exploration a little bit. So there's this good balance of like open areas versus closed areas, open areas, closed areas. Like, we're in an open area right now, and then we're going to go under this bridge, and it's going to get closed again, and it just kind of alternates back and forth. Kind of give that nice feeling of pacing throughout a level, because you don't want to have too many closed areas all the time, but you also don't want too many open areas too. Going to have the nice balance. Here we can kind of see the edge of the map a little bit. And of course they put these yellow blocks here to cover up some of the edge. Wish it did a bit more, but again, not a huge deal because players are not going to be looking over here very often. Let's see. So we move forward here. This is a very fun choke point in versus mode because the specials can spawn above you and drop down. I always enjoyed this area in versus mode. You can do some pretty big damage here. We see our first view here of the Midnight Riders, our first reveal. So now we know that there's a Whispering Oaks amusement park, and now we know there's something called the Midnight Riders performing live, so it's some kind of band at the fairgrounds. And it just adds to that feeling of building anticipation and foreshadowing. And you can kind of probably guess at this point that we're going to have a finale that's at a stadium. but you know, you have to go through everything to get to that point. So it's a very cool feeling of anticipation. Same thing here with the other semi-truck. Again, it pushes you in like, you know, you're like a flowing river of water and you're guided to the right here. You know, they very easily could have put the truck oriented like this, you know, like angled that way or something like that, and that would have blocked the path just as well, but they didn't do that, and they didn't do it intentionally. So it's a nice call by the developers there. And so something I really like about this whole motel area is how open-ended it is to kind of explore wherever you want. And you don't really see that too often on Left 4 Dead maps. So actually, most of them are pretty linear, where you're kind of on a golden path walking forward. But this area, you have a lot of choice, and I think that feels really cool. You know, you can come down here, go to this pool area, get some supplies. You can stick to the rooftops only, and then just go through the second floor right away. Or you can drop down and, you know, explore some rooms, and then eventually hit this corner and get up top. It's a lot of choice here, which is pretty cool, and I wish I saw more Left 4 Dead maps experimenting with this kind of open-ended areas a little bit more. One more thing here, we also see another semi-hero prop, which is this big sign. I also call this a landmark, because it is a big thing that kind of landmarks you forward, even with a big arrow there. So just kind of another thing to orient you and, you know, guide you forward. You see this, and then you see the lights in the background from the fairgrounds, and you know that's you're ready to go forward. Let's see. So we have a lot of something I noticed with these hotel rooms is there's a lot of them that are cut, like they're just empty. You can't even go in them. Actually boarded up entirely. I think that's really smart to do, from like a practical, you know, art perspective, because you don't really need to have every single one of these rooms arted out. Like, you don't really need to have every single one full of detail, full of supplies. Like, it actually wouldn't add that much if this room was here. Like, I would probably just walk past it. You know, it's not really adding much to the game. So when you're designing a level, you always want to have that balance of what works for the gameplay, and, you know, what makes the level as good as you can. And you don't really want to go too overboard with it, in the sense that, like, you don't want to add pointless fluff that just makes things boring. You know, you want to have the game feel streamlined and tight, and, you know, only put your best foot forward, kind of thing. And when they were designing this area, they probably had all the rooms to begin with, and I know in the editor, if you look at it, you can actually see there's rooms built in here, they're just not drawn. So they probably built all the rooms to begin with, and then realized we probably don't need all these rooms, so let's just cut some of them to save the artist time from having to art it out. You know, because the artist has to come in, he has to place these beds, place the TV, place the item spawners, or the designer place the item spawners, and, you know, all that work, and that takes time. And when you have, you know, a game made like Left 4 Dead, made in a year, you gotta move fast, and you don't really have time to do that stuff, so you have to make some cuts here and there. So let's see, what else? So you go through this area here, go to the second floor. There's some really cool moments here in versus mode where you can get pulls off to the side. One-way drops and reset points like that are always really, really fun in versus. Sometimes this alarm car is armed as well, and you can pull people down into it. So if you're designing a versus map, you can try to put stuff like this into your map. You know, places where there's like one-way drops and someone can get separated. It always creates really high tension and fun moments. Same thing over here. You can also get pulled off right here. Then you proceed through this room. I've seen chargers attacking here a lot. It's very deadly for a charge spit combo. So you come out here, and this area to the left over here always kind of bothered me a little bit, because it's very much like a dead space. Like, there's not much going on here, and I'm kind of surprised Valve even like didn't block this off. Like, they didn't put like a barrier here or something like that. I wish that they had done more with it, like maybe at least put a few cars. I know, especially in versus mode, this area is very, very bad because there's almost nowhere to spawn as a special. If the survivors spread out properly and they like block spawns here, then you have the guy like standing over here blocking this tree, and you have like nowhere to come from as a special. So it's really, really bad in versus mode. But I think some of the community configs like ProMod and ZoMod have added props here, just to give the specialists more of a chance, so it's not so one-sided. Dark Chronicle was probably the most survivor-sided of all the Left 4 Dead 2 campaigns. It's very, very open. A lot of invisible walls, unfortunately. For instance, this rooftop used to have an invisible wall over it, but I believe the Last Stand update removed it, which is really cool. So you can actually get up here as a tank now and throw rocks. Yeah, let's go forward a little bit. You have this cool valley here, some one-way drops. You can kind of stop halfway and get supplies. Again, this is another very cool spot in Versus because you can pull the last guy who doesn't drop in time and then, instant kill him. Or you can even charge people down the hill, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. So we have this cool little valley here with like some kind of stream going through it. Looks like the side's kind of dammed up a little bit. Some blockage over there. So the purpose of this valley is kind of subtle, but well, first off, it's kind of cool. It's just cool having this valley that you go into instead of always walking on roads all the time. But just from a design point of view, like an optimization point of view, this valley serves a very useful purpose in that it breaks up this area of the motel from this area of the final fairgrounds area, like this parking lot up there. And the distance is long enough such that when you're over here, the motel area doesn't render. You can kind of see it, but that's not really a real thing. I can talk about that in another video. It's called a skybox prop, but you can kind of see it. But anyway, it doesn't render when you're up there. And same thing with these hills here. These serve as sightline blockers in a way. So if you're down here, anything that's up there, because you cannot see it, is not being rendered. And same thing over here on this side as well. There's sightline blockers here that block rendering of stuff up there. You can't see them, but they're in the editor. They're just called no draw blocks, and then create what are called world brushes, and the world brushes tell you what you can and cannot see. But yeah, so these valleys serve a very useful purpose to break up these two areas, and I suspect that the designers actually measured out how long this valley should be based on what the max render distance is. Like, I'm just making up a random number here, like 10,000 units. Let's say it's 10,000 units is the max render distance. So they probably made the valley at least that long, if not longer, just so they can, have sufficient separation between these two areas. Because you need to get, a good frame rate, especially on consoles who have struggles with long sight lines. Luckily, newer engines like Unreal 5 don't have these limitations. You can kind of have giant open areas with a ton of detail, and it just magically works with nanite, which is pretty cool. So that's a limitation of source engine. So if you're making a source engine map, you have to know that optimization trick. There's a little shortcut jump here you can kind of do, which is pretty cool. Probably not intended by the developers, but doesn't really, you only skip like a second or two of walking, so it's not a huge deal. In versus mode, this is a really cool area because you can get all sorts of crazy charges off of here. If you get multi-charge, someone can fly really far and then get in-capped or even die. So I've had multiple chances in the level to get like pulls off and stuff like that, so it's kind of like your last chance to get some huge damage in, which often happens. So one of my favorite areas in this map. Let me think here. So we have these little shrub props. They're called the shrub wall in the files. And this goes back to what I was talking about getting a lot of value out of your art assets in the game. So I think these are great because they do a good job of blocking sight lines. They add a lot of detail, and they're relatively like cheap to render. Like this wall is literally just like two 2D planes in like an oval shape. And it works really great. They use this prop in every map, I think, just repeatedly, and you don't really notice how often it's used that often. Like it's just kind of a cool side detail because you're not paying attention to that stuff. And like these shrubs, I think were already existing in the game, so they just kind of combined them together and made this little prop that kind of fills up space a little bit. So it's a really good usage of art here to get a lot of value, and you can kind of see inside of it, but they've kind of made it so it's hard to do. Like you can see inside of this one, but then they put this tree inside of it, and then they put these bushes inside of it to cover that little gap up. So the artist even thought of what if someone turns around and looks in there. So they thought of that possibility, which is pretty cool.
Let's get across the park.
So here we are at the opening here. There's this little hay texture on the ground, which I always thought was unusual, because there's no barn until you get to map 4. But anyway, I just thought I'd point that out. But now we have these yellow blocks again, and they're painted yellow. And you know, as we talked about before, there's a yellow paint discourse, and that's not a new thing. It's been going on in games for quite a while, but it's more subtle in this case. And you can even see it again up ahead, more yellow stuff leading to the safe room, as well as this yellow sign as well. And I'm not sure the reason why human beings are attracted to yellow. Maybe there's some evolutionary reason, like maybe there's some kind of flowers that were attractive to human beings a while ago that were yellow, and now we just have an affinity for moving towards yellow things. Or maybe it's just because it contrasts so much with the environment and looks, you know, so much different from everything around it. I'm not sure, but yeah, these again just kind of guide you forward and lead you from one area to the next. One more thing, there's this extra little building over here that I noticed. It's not actually present in map 2, but it's present in this one. And I think they only use this little half circle thing to spawn zombies in. This is kind of like a horde spawner. And then a horde runs over here. And they even put that bus there, I think intentionally, to block vision of that. So you don't really see... Oops. So you don't really see the horde coming in from over there. Because you don't want to see horde spawning like in thin air, because that's kind of immersion breaking. You theoretically could probably do it here, but you probably will not be able to. And in practical gameplay, probably not going to see that. And then we have these fence covers here, these green fence covers. You know, so these are here because they're blocking your view into the fairgrounds. And if Valve had not had these here and just had a fence here, you could see through it. That would have been a lot of extra work for them to have to art all this stuff out and make it all look good. And just for like a very glimpse view that you look at for like 2 seconds. So they made the call to just cover it up and block it so you don't have to see it all. And that's, you know, it's a good thing to do from a saving time perspective. And you know you're going to the fairgrounds anyway because you can see the Whispering Oak sign right there. So that's kind of all you need. Like, okay, we're gonna go there now, so we're there, and you don't need to spend, you know, several days putting detail on all of here. And also optimization too, keeps the map size down, keeps the frame rate high. Let's see, I think that kind of covers it. Well, I think there's actually one more thing I want to point out. There's these cars here in versus mode, which are always really cool. Hittable cars for tank, you can knock them up in here. If you have a tank, I think a late game tank, people often fight it in this open area, but he can bring these cars in as well as have this car here to create a cool hittable tank, which is always very fun. I think that covers Dark Carnival Map 1. Again, if you have any comments you want to leave below, if something I might have missed that you want to talk about, any other feedback you have from my videos, I greatly appreciate it. But yeah, hopefully I'm going to go through all the maps in the game. Maybe Left 4 Dead 1 if I have time. It's quite a lot of maps. I think there's like 50 plus maps if I do both games, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.